Started on this stuff yesterday with parallel lines. Let's start with that corresponding stuff. Remember we had two lines. Now these two lines are not necessarily parallel to each other, and it would be nice if I fix this right here. There we go. That's better. Watch. I got two lines, and they're not necessarily parallel, are they? Now tomorrow I'm going to make these two lines actually parallel to each other with a transversal. But today, all we're doing is learning what the names of these angles are. That's all we're doing, okay? We're not really learning any real math that's involved in this. We're just learning the names of the angles. So it's kind of like geometry vocabulary, I guess, if you want to think of it that way. So let's put a transversal in here. What does a transversal do? It does what? It intersects both lines. Good. Okay, it intersects both lines. That's what a transversal does. It takes two lines, two or more. I just happen to have two right here. But two or more lines, and it intersects them. Okay, that's what a transversal is. Let's put the numbers in here again. We'll just name them the same things that we did yesterday. So 5, 6. In fact, I was, I don't know, I was searching around on YouTube for something, and I saw some videos by a teacher, and it's rare that you actually see teachers put stuff up that they're actually teaching in class like I do. Usually they're like, in an office or in a room by themselves, and they're teaching to the computer, and then they post them online and that kind of stuff. But every once in a while you'll see some videos on there that they're actually in a real classroom and they're actually teaching. So I came across, and I think they're using the same exact book we are, because it was the same section number and same chapter, and they were doing the same exact stuff. And it's kind of interesting to hear somebody else's take on what you're teaching. So maybe at the end I'll show you, if I remember where it is. It might be on my history. I'll have to look at it, and I'll let you look at it. And if you want, I know you're not going to run home and say, "Well, I can't wait to see this other teacher that I don't know teach this stuff." Okay, and it's the same exact stuff that I'm learning here. But every once in a while, it's good to hear somebody else's take on it, hear somebody else's point of view on the same exact subject. He might say things maybe a little bit differently that might help you out. Okay, so maybe at the end of this, if we have time, I'll show you where that is. All right, but for right now, let's just do this. Remember we talked about this group of 4 angles up here and this group of 4 angles down here? All right, there's angles that kind of match up with each other. And if you take a look at angle 1, I call angle 1, let's just, for the sake of making it easy, it's kind of like in the top left-hand corner, isn't it? And then 2 would be where? In the top right, and then the 3 would be bottom left, and then the 4 would be bottom right. Okay, and the same thing with 5, 6, 7, and 8. Would you agree? So the ones that match up with each other, the ones that are in the same spot, like 1 is in the top left corner. Look at this group of 4 angles down here. Which angle is in the top left corner of those group of 4? 5 is, okay? And 2 and what match up down here? 6. 3 and 7. Everybody seeing this? 4 and 8. And they don't just match up. We give it a word. We give it a nice geometry word. And what was that word? It was corresponding, right? And we did mention this yesterday. So I'm just hitting it again so we do it all in one shot here. All right, so they're called corresponding angles. And you say, well, why do I care if they're corresponding angles? Because we're going to refer to them every once in a while. We'll say, hey, look at the corresponding angles. And there's something that's true about corresponding angles. And we're going to learn that tomorrow. Right now, with non-parallel lines, you can't really say anything. I mean, look at angle 1 and angle 5. I mean, they don't look like they're equal to each other. They don't look like they add up to 90. They don't look like they add up to 180. There's really nothing you can say about 1 and 5 right now except the fact that they're just corresponding angles. That's it. Tomorrow is going to be a different story, though. We're going to have parallel lines cut by a transversal. Okay, not just any old 2 lines, parallel lines. But today they're not. So we're just going to list the corresponding angles. We might have done this yesterday, but we'll do it again. So let's just list them. So angle 1, I'll put a comma. We'll just kind of make a list. What's the corresponding angle with angle 1? Angle what? Angle 5. That's a weird looking angle symbol, but you get the idea. So angle 1 and 5. Let's do some more. Angles, let's do this over here. Angle 2 and what else? 6. Okay. Angle 3. And angle 7. You see how they match up with each other? Makes sense, doesn't it? And angle what? 4 and angle 8. So they match up. So these are the corresponding angles. There's actually 4 pairs of corresponding angles. Everybody see that? We also talked about this. Michael, you need to stop. You're doing something, okay, because you're irritating him. Is he just going to turn around and just mess with him? Okay. All right, well, both of you then. How about that? Does that work? Daniel, look at me. That's enough, okay? So look at this. Look at 1 and 5. Like 5, remember we talked about this? Remember I kind of shaded in here? We call all the angles in between the two lines what kind of angles? I think we talked about this yesterday. No, maybe it was my other class because I went a little bit further in the 5th period class. But I'll say it now. Look at all the stuff in between these two lines. Sean, did you say it? Interior angles, right. So all the angles that are between the two lines, between the two white lines, are interior angles. I didn't give myself enough room. Let's put this over here. So they would be interior angles. Everybody see that? So I could keep shading if I wanted to. See, all the angles in between the two lines would be interior angles. So if I asked you to list, let's put that word interior right over here. If I asked you to list all the interior angles, the ones that are between the two white lines, which angles would they be? Angle 3, and we don't pair them up, we just name them, right? So 3, 4, what else? 5 and 6. Okay, they're all the angles that are in between the two white lines. Does that make sense? Okay. So what do you think you're going to call the ones out here? Call them exterior angles. Somebody in the other class said, I think, outerior angles, but they're not outerior, they're exterior. All right, so they're exterior angles. So I got exterior angles outside of this line, and I also have exterior angles outside of this line as well. So let's list, I'll write it again, let's list the exterior angles, and I'll put interior angles. All right, so which ones are the exterior angles? Angles what? 1 and 2. What else? 7 and 8. So I'll just list them like this. All right? So those are all my exterior angles. Does that make sense? That's going to be helpful because it's something we're going to learn in just a few minutes. So look at the corresponding angles. The corresponding angles, those pairs, or it's actually a combination of what? 1 exterior and what else? 1 interior. Do you see that? So corresponding angles have both. They have an exterior and they have an interior. All right, that's kind of important for what we're going to do a little bit later. Does that make sense? Uh-oh. You just unplugged my thing. All right, I had a little technical difficulty. Let's do this. What do I say? Oh, the corresponding angles. They include what? Exterior and interior. Agreed? All right. So now let me copy the two lines and the transversal. Try this again. There, there, there. All right, so I'll copy that, scooch down here. Look at that. Pretty cool. And let's put the numbers in here again. We'll put the same numbers, might as well. 1, 2, 3. Now, there's nothing magical about me numbering these angles. This just happens to be how I numbered them. I mean, you could have named them any kind of different numbers or order or whatever. I just happen to name them like this. All right, let's talk about another type. So I think we're going to talk about, let me think, I think 4 types. Yep, 4 types of relationships between these angles. Okay, these are angle relationships. All right, you might want to jot that word down. They're angle relationships. And so the first one is corresponding angles. We all got that, right? The ones that match up with each other. So we got another one. Let's do this. Let's talk, we talked interior and exterior. Let's just talk about the interior angles right now. And let's look at the interior. I got 3, 4, 5, and 6 are my interior angles. Now, I want to look at the angles that are completely opposite each other but are interior. So look at 3. Which angle out of all the interior, just the interior, which one is like completely opposite of angle 3? I would say 6, wouldn't you? Because look, it's on the other side. No, 8's not an interior angle, right? So 6 is an interior. So look what it is. It's on the other side of the transversal, and it's down in this group of 4 angles down here, isn't it? It's completely opposite each other. Would you agree? But we don't call them opposite angles. We call it alternate. Alternate, okay? And they're interior, aren't they? They're on the inside of those 2 lines, so we call them interior angles. So that's a word that you need to know. Hope you guys are writing this down. Got a lot of people not writing at all. Most of you are, but there's a bunch that aren't. You didn't write this down yesterday because we didn't do this yesterday. All right, so they're alternate interior angles. Now let's list which ones are alternate interior angles. Well, we already said one pair, didn't we? Angle 3, and what's the other one that's completely opposite of angle 3? Angle what? 6. Yep, 3 and 6. Look, 6 is on the opposite side of the transversal, and it's down below, isn't it? All right, 4 is just on the opposite side of the transversal, but it's kind of right next to it, isn't it? All right, so that's not alternate. Alternate is completely opposite. So 3 and 6 are alternate interior angles. Do you see another pair of alternate interior angles? I'd say 4 and 5, wouldn't you? Because 4 and 5 are completely opposite. Now, I'm just talking about the interior angles right now, okay? So 4 and 5 are also alternate interior angles. Does that make sense? It's not hard to see, is it? So this is what they're going to do. On the worksheet, on the quiz, on the test, I'm going to give you a situation that looks something like this. It may not look exactly like this, but it'll look something like this. And they'll say, name the corresponding angles, or name the alternate interior angles, or name the other two that we're going to do. Does that make sense? So you need to know what these words mean and how these angles relate to those words right there. That's not so hard, is it? No, pretty easy. All right, let's do another type. So look at these. These are all interior angles, and there's only 2 pair of alternate interior angles. What about corresponding? How many pairs of corresponding angles do we have? Look in your notes. How many pairs of corresponding angles? Corresponding, how many pairs? We have 4 of them, right. On corresponding, we have 4 of them. Look, 1 and 5, 3 and 7, 2 and 6, 4 and 8. There's 4 corresponding. What about alternate interior angles? How many pairs do we have of that? Just 2. 3 and 6, 4 and 5. They're alternate interior angles. Remember, the word alternate means completely opposite. So 3 and 6 are completely opposite, but they're also interior angles. You got that? Okay, let's do another type. Good idea. Let's do that one. So we had alternate interior. Let's do alternate exterior angles. So that should make sense. So now we're just dealing with the exterior angles. The exterior are 1, 2, 7, and 8. Right? We talked about that earlier. So look at angle 1. Let's just start with angle 1. That's an exterior angle. Which angle is like completely opposite of angle 1? Which exterior angle is completely opposite? It's 8. That's right. So it's on the other side of the transversal, and it's down here in this group of angles, isn't it? So it's completely opposite. So 1 and 8 are completely opposite, but we don't say they're opposite angles. We call them what? Alternate exterior angles, because they're on the outside of those 2 white lines. So let's list it. So angle 1 and angle 8. They're alternate exterior angles. And tomorrow we're going to learn something that's true about alternate exterior angles and alternate interior and corresponding. Just not today. All right, so 1 and 8. What's another pair of alternate exterior angles? 2 and 7. Good, because 2's exterior and 7's exterior. They're completely opposite each other. So angle 2 and angle 7. They would be alternate, excuse me, exterior angles. It's easy to see, isn't it? We haven't done any math at all, have we? We haven't talked about what the angles are equal to or anything like that, and we're not going to do that today. Tomorrow we'll do that, all right? Not today, though. We're just learning the names of these angles. That's all we're doing. Everybody got that down? All right, I hope. I know some of you don't, because I still see empty desks, which is a shame, even after I said something to you. Here is another one. Let's take a look at the interior angles again. But this time, I don't want to go completely opposite. What I want to do is this. I want to stay on the same side of the transversal. Okay, I want to stay on the same side of the transversal. So look at 4. What's another interior that's on the same side as this transversal right here? Well, 8's not, because it's not an interior. Remember, I just want to deal with interior angles. You're right, 8 is on the same side of the transversal, but what interior angle is on the same side? 6 is, isn't it? All right, so 4 and 6 are same side. Now, I'm going to have you write 2 things down here. Same side, interior. I'm just going to shorthand interior angles. All right, same side interior angles. Or, now that's what I used to teach. I used to teach out of a book, and they called it same side interior angles. And I kind of like that name because it makes sense. It's on the same side of the transversal, and they're interior angles. It completely makes sense to me to call it same side interior angles. This book calls it something a little different. They call them consecutive interior angles. All right, so this is the word that you're going to see in this book. But I like to write same side because I just want you to realize which angles we're talking about. Same side interior is the same thing as consecutive interior angles. Well, it's a different book, different people that write it. So it's not universal. It doesn't stay the same, no matter, it just depends on the author of the book and what they want to call it. So they call these consecutive interior angles. So let's list the consecutive interior angles, or the same side interior angles. They're the same thing, right? It's just two different words to describe it. So what do you think? Angle 4. What's an interior angle that's on the same side of that transversal? Angle 6, right? So angle 6. Now again, we haven't said anything about them being equal or adding up to something or anything like that, have we? We'll talk about that tomorrow. We're just learning the names and learning the relationships. That's all we're doing today. So angle 4 and 6, they're consecutive interior angles. They're on the same side of the transversal, and they're both interior angles. All right, what else do we have? 3 and 5, good, because 3 and 5 are on the same side of the transversal, and they're both interior angles. So those are my consecutive interior angles. And from now on, we're going to refer to it as consecutive interior angles, because that's the way the book does. When they give you problems, they're going to say, name the consecutive interior angles, so you need to know how they're referring to it. Okay? Does that make sense? So that's consecutive interior angles. So those are 4 types. Let's run through them again. What was the first type we talked about? Now the first one. Nope. Corresponding. Corresponding angles are the first ones. Okay? How many pairs of corresponding angles are there? It's 4 of them. What was the next one we talked about? Alternate interior angles. Okay, alternate interior angles. How many pairs of alternate interior angles were there? There's 2. Okay, what was the next one we talked about? Alternate exterior angles. Right, and there were 2 pair of those. And then the next one was consecutive interior angles. And how many pair are there? There's 2 pair right there. Okay, does that make sense? Now, if they're interior angles, they call them interior angles. If they're exterior, they call them exterior angles. The corresponding angles are the only ones that have a combination of interior and exterior. Everybody remember that, right? Talked about that a little bit earlier. Okay. I think that's just about it. Tell you what, let's look at the example. We got a few minutes here before I give you the worksheet out. Let's do the example that's in the book. If you have your book open, you don't have to. I'll write it down. But it's on page 172. It's the example 2. All right, so this looks a little bit different. Actually, well, it will be red in a second. There it is. And then I'm going to make these 2 white just to stay with our color coordination here. So you got a line going like this, and then you got a line going like this. And I'm going to put the numbers in here. Now you still have 2 lines, don't you? Cut by a transversal. Everybody see that? So you got these 2 white lines cut by this red transversal. They're not always going to be white lines in a red transversal. All right, I just did that so you can see it a little bit better. But that's what we have. So let me write the angles in here. And we're going to find out which ones are corresponding, which ones are alternate interior, and so forth. But our picture looks a little different here, so we really have to think about which ones are which. It's actually a little easier tomorrow when we deal with parallel lines. When you deal with parallel lines, it's a little easier to see which one's which. But if you come over here, if we look at this, you could look at this as like the top left, bottom, or top right, bottom left, bottom right, couldn't you? And what would I call this one? I call this one probably top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right. Everybody see that? All right. So let's list all the corresponding angles. Let's list the pairs of corresponding angles. I'll just shorthand it to that. C-O-R-R. So let's start with angle 1. So which one is going to be corresponding with angle 1? Say it, Cookie. 3, right. 1 and 3. Do you see this is the top right one and this is the top right one? All right, if you want to look at it that way. So 1 and what? 3 go together. List some other ones. Let's start with angle 2. Angle 2, which one down here corresponds with angle 2? Angle 4, good. All right, let's keep going. Angle, what else? Let's go 8. 8 and 6, good. And then let's go 7. Angle 7 and 5, very good. So those are all my corresponding angles. That's the kind of stuff they're going to ask you on the worksheets. Pretty easy stuff. Really no math involved. You just have to look at the angles and decide what kind of angles are they. All right. What's another type of angle that we did? Alternate interior angles, right? So we'll shorthand it a little bit. Let's see the alternate interior. First of all, you got to know which ones are the interior angles. Here's my 2 lines. Which ones are the interior angles? 7, 2, 6, and 3, right? Right? They're the ones in between those 2 white lines. Which ones are alternate? 2 and 6 and 7 and 3. Good. And it doesn't matter what order you write them in. But 2 and what? Now, the 2 and the 6 have to go together. You could say 2 and 6 or 6 and 2. That doesn't make any difference. And then what? 7 and 3. Good. So that's easy to see, isn't it? All right. So this is pretty easy stuff. I'll try to squeeze this in here. Alternate exterior angles. Let's try to find the alternate exterior angles. Let's find all the exterior angles first of all. So that's 1 and 8 and 5 and 4. Good. So let's find out which ones are alternate. So let's say 1 and what? 5. Good, because they're opposite sides of the transversal. One's way up here, one's way down here. So angle 1 and angle 5 are alternate exterior. What's the other one? 8 and 4. Yeah, this piece of cake, isn't it? 4. All right, and what's the next type? So there's 3 corresponding alternate interior, alternate exterior. What's the last one? Yeah, but what do we call them? Consecutive interior angles. I just said same side interior just so you can kind of like picture it, you know, on the same side and their interior. But the book uses consecutive interior angles, so let's use that word. So they're interior, right? Interior, so they got to be either 7, 2, 6, or 3. So what are they? 2 and what? 2 and 3, right? Because they have to be on the same side of the transversal, right? Remember that other word? And then what else? 7 and 6. Wow, that's pretty easy stuff, isn't it? All right with that? All right, let me just double check to see what else we have on this worksheet. Okay, I'm looking at the worksheet. The problems on the worksheet are going to be a little bit different than this. They're not just going to say name all the corresponding angles. They're going to say this. They're going to say look at angle 2 and angle 6. Name the, what do they say? Classify the relationship between these pair of angles. You hear what I said? Classify the relationship between 2 and 6. So if I looked at 2 and 6, what kind of angles are 2 and 6? They're alternate what? Interior angles. So that would be your answer. So they tell you, look at 2 and 6 and tell me what they're going to be. So you write what? Alternate interior angles. And if you want to shorthand it like that, that's perfectly fine. Okay? But don't go any shorter than that. Just do it like that. Does that make sense what they're going to do? So they're going to give you a couple different pictures, and they're going to say 1 and 5. What are 1 and 5? What's the relationship between angle 1 and 5? They're alternate exterior angles, right? And so that would be your answer right there. Make sense? What's the relationship between 7 and 6? 7 and 6? Nah. There's no corresponding interior. They're consecutive. Consecutive. That CONS is consecutive. Consecutive interior angles. What about 1 and 4? What if I said 1 and 4? What would they be? I'm sorry, I lied. Not 1 and 4. I messed up. There's really no relationship between 1 and 4 out of the ones we've talked about. Okay, because they're not alternate because they're on the same side of the transversal. That was my fault. What about 1 and 3? Sorry. 1 and 3. What is it? Corresponding angles. You got it. 1 and 3 are corresponding angles. All right. Name me another pair of corresponding angles. 8 and what? 6. Okay, good. So that's another pair. You with me on that? That's the kind of stuff that they're going to ask you. Wow, I've nailed them all down, didn't I? Look at this. I should take a picture. Look, look. All right, that's it. I'm going to give you a worksheet, and it's worksheet 3-1.